Do you remember what Europe looked like in the 80s and 90s? A Europe of strong industry, a solid middle class, vibrant cities, and a wealth of hope. But look back, in 2026, the streets are still crowded with tourists. But how many of them are young people building their future here? How many are retirees? How many shops still belong to local families? Europe is no longer the engine of the world. It is becoming an exhibition hall of the past. And the most worrying thing isn't the change. It's the feeling that things are moving too slowly to be shocking, but fast enough to make a generation feel betrayed. Today, we'll be blunt. How have energy, demographic, financial, and industrial policies eroded the gold standard that Europe once prided itself on? This is not a sensational video. This is the cold calculation of economics. Let's get to the end of this story. If you lived in Europe in the 90s or early 2000s, you'll understand that feeling. Europe at that time was like a five-star hotel run on taxes. Everything was smooth, clean, decent, and seemed to never fall into disrepair. I remember the first time I sat in a small cafe in Germany. A local uncle laughed and said, "Here, you work to live, not live to work." It sounded like an advertisement, but it was true at the time. The gold standard at the time was healthcare was almost free, and people didn't have to sell their houses to get medical treatment like in many other places. Long vacation time, with water available for an average of nearly 6 weeks a year, is enough to make you feel like a human being. The train runs like a Swiss clock, going to work without prayer. A livable, clean, safe city with genuine public spaces, high-paying industrial jobs, a large and strong middle class. And here's the fact that makes one raise an eyebrow. In 2008, the EU and US economies were nearly on par, like twin brothers. But today, the US has launched to over 27 trillion, while the EU has only managed to squeeze through 17 trillion. A gap so large that it's equal to the size of the entire Japanese economy. A gap large enough to fit an entire superpower in between. Ultimately, why is a place that was once the global standard of living falling behind like an athlete with lead weights tied to their legs? And what is the bitter part? Europe once chose butter and welfare. The US selects noteworthy tools and startups. Looking back now, it seems like one side is winning the game. But the real question is, did this gold standard disappear by fate or by policy? If you live in Europe, when did you start seeing a decline in your quality of life? And now, we will begin with the first wound that suffocated the German machine: deindustrialization. If you want to understand why the city is gradually becoming a museum, remember to subscribe to the channel, not to support me, but so you don't miss the rest of the painting. If Europe is a luxury car, then Germany is the V8 engine under the hood. And for decades, it roared with confidence. The car runs smoothly. Rich people. The city lights up. But then, the engine started to run out of steam. It's not because of a shortage of engineers, but because the fuel was cut off. I once visited an industrial area in Western Germany where steel and chemical plants sprang up like fortresses. You can hear the sounds of machinery, like the heartbeat of the economy. Now imagine that heartbeat gradually slowing down and then falling silent. There were no gunshots. There was no smoke of war. There is only one thing more terrifying: silence. The factory did not protest. The factory just closed down. To be fair, the German model used to be very pragmatic and somewhat cold. The US worried about security. China bought the goods. Russia supplies cheap gas, a perfect triangle, until Nord Stream was destroyed. When that tube disappears, it's like someone pulling the breathing tube out of a sleeping patient. And the consequences aren't just a few numbers on the report. These are cold, corporate decisions. BASF, the chemical giant that manufactures what's in toothpaste, medicine, shoes, and car plastics, has decided to build large production lines in Germany and pour $10 billion into China to build a new mega factory. $10 billion. Imagine a small city packed up and shipped across Asia in containers. When Made in Germany had to go and ask for accommodation in China, you know, the game changed the rules. By the end of 2024, German industrial production had fallen to its lowest level since the 2020 lockdown. It's not because Germans are lazier, but because making a car in Germany is now like baking a cake at home. Electricity is priced like gold. And what was the most biting satire? Germany closed its last remaining nuclear power plants in 2023 amid the energy crisis, and then returned to burning lignite, the dirtiest fuel. Typical. How to save the environment, perhaps by digging up the entire village and burning it down. The truth is, you can't build a green paradise with hell's electricity bill. If you were a factory owner, would you stay in Germany for European value, or would you move to a cheaper place to survive? And this is just the first wound, because when industry leaves, the next thing that disappears isn't GDP, but young people. And that's when Europe entered its most terrifying spiral, the population crisis. If you want to continue peeling back this layer of truth with me, subscribe to the channel. Not because of the algorithm, but because the sequel is even colder. If factory closures are the heart attack of the economy, then the population crisis is a slow-moving disease. But there is no cure. I once passed by a residential area in northern Italy. The park is still beautiful. The stone bench is still there. But the playground was devoid of children's voices. You don't hear laughter. You hear the wind. A society without children is like a house without windows, still standing there, but without light. Italy has a fertility rate of approximately 1.18 children per woman in 2024. To maintain the population, 2.1 is needed. Imagine this. Instead of having 21 children per 10 families to maintain the same generation, they only have 11 or 12. With each rotation, the population shrinks like a sweater washed in hot water. And this is the part that's hard to swallow. In the 1960s, there were about 4 workers supporting 1 retired person. Easy to breathe. Lighten the burden. By 2050, in many countries like Italy or Spain, the number could fall below 2 workers for every 1 retiree. The 2 of them have to support someone else, and they also have to support themselves. And you know, when the number of taxpayers decreases, benefits don't disappear. They just become more expensive. The European pension system is largely payable upfront. There are no gold hoards located underground. The money the grandparents receive this month comes directly from the salaries of this month's younger generation. That sounds like unity. Until the young people started leaving, because labor taxes have increased, because jobs are scarce, because housing is expensive. You are 25 years old, have a degree, but you have to live with your parents until you are 35. Meanwhile, the state expects you to bear the burden of a system that is aging faster than its population. A society where young people lack the confidence to have children is a society that has lost faith in tomorrow. And politics here is very practical. The elderly are the largest voting bloc. Pension cuts, lost the election, massive immigration to balance the population, causing cultural backlash. So the familiar solution, borrowing and delaying. One sarcastic remark I heard was, "We've built a paradise for retirees and forgotten to build a future for young people." What about you? What do you think? If you were 25, would you stay and contribute the majority of your income to maintain this system? Or would you choose the USA, Australia, or Switzerland? And here's the coldest point of contact. When young people leave, it's not just taxes that disappear. The idea also disappeared. Innovation has also disappeared. Next, we'll talk about that void, the third wound, Europe's technological graveyard. There's a simple question I often ask when sitting down for a beer with friends in Europe. Name a global European tech company that's dominating the world. And often the answer is silence. Nokia? He was once king. Now it's just a memory. Ericsson? Still alive, but no longer symbolic. A European search engine? Are not. A European social network? If you reply to Mastodon, then congratulations, you're right. But also my condolences, because nobody but IT people uses it. Some say that Europe invented the future, and then let others sell that future to themselves. This is the cold reality. The modern economy is a digital economy, And Europe is living in a world powered by American software, Asian hardware, and European rules. A statistic that sounds like a joke, but it's completely serious. The 7 largest US tech companies have a combined value greater than the entire stock markets of the UK, France, Germany, and Italy combined. That means just a few logos in Silicon Valley would be enough to weigh all 4 of Europe's oldest economies. Just ask yourself, if Google shuts down its service in Europe tomorrow, many businesses will go bankrupt before they even have a chance to call a lawyer. Europe is not lacking in intelligence. The web was invented at CERN. DeepMind started in London. There is plenty of talent. But the problem lies in the system. Europe is divided into 27 countries, 27 labor laws, 27 tax authorities, and 27 administrative barriers. A startup in France wants to expand into Germany. It's not just about translating languages. It has to translate the entire legal system. And while America races on the highway of technology, Europe stands by the roadside, holding the rule signs and blowing the whistle. There's a famous satire in international business circles. America is innovative. China copies. European management. That sounds funny. But looking at the results, it's hard to laugh. The EU once had 30% of the world's top 100 largest companies. Now, it's just under 14%. The future is being written in San Francisco and Shenzhen, while Europe is reading it on iPhone. When a continent is only good at writing rules for other people's technology, it's no longer a player, it's an audience. Do you think the reason is that the EU is too protective of its citizens? Or that it has stifled innovation with its own good qualities? And when innovation is lost, money does the next thing. It runs away. In the next section, we will talk about the 4th wound, the capital outflow from Europe. If you want to continue this journey, please subscribe to the channel. Don't believe me. Just keep an eye on it. Let's verify it together. If you want to know if an economy is truly healthy, don't listen to politicians. Look where the money is going. Money has no patriotism. It only has a survival instinct. In the US, approximately 58% of households own stocks. This means that more than half the population has a foothold in the capital markets. In Germany, approximately 18%. Imagine a stadium with 100 people. In the US, 58 people are investing in business growth. In Germany, there are only 18 people. The rest can be deposited into a savings account with low interest rates or purchased as real estate. When people don't believe in their businesses, businesses don't believe in the country either. Europe has some great companies, but when it came time to raise large sums of money, they looked across the Atlantic. ARM, the chip design company found in most of the phones you hold, is a British tech gem, but when they went public in 2023, they chose NASDAQ in New York instead of London. Spotify from Sweden, trading in the US. BioNTech, a symbol of German science, also in the US. Ironically, even Europe's most successful children don't want to take their European surnames on the stock exchange. Why? The US capital market is deeper, more liquid, and more willing to accept risk. What about Europe? Traditional banking system, fragmentation regulations, a culture of cautious investing. That sounds safe. But being overly safe can sometimes be like standing still in the middle of a race. There's a bitter paradox. The Norwegian National Wealth Fund, one of the world's largest funds, invests the majority of its equity portfolio in the United States. This means that European savings are funding the American tech boom and then going back to selling products to Europe itself. When your capital fuels the growth of others, you lose not just your money, you lose your future. Do you think this is a wise strategy for globalization? Or a sign that the financial system isn't attractive enough? And when the money leaves, the factory leaves, the young people leave. What's left? The answer lies in energy costs, the next wound, where green dreams collide with cold bills. Energy is more than just an industry. It is the foundation of every industry. Electricity is cheap, life is easy. Electricity is expensive, everything becomes a burden. I once spoke with a machine shop owner in southern Germany. He didn't complain about the workers' wages, no complaints about taxes. He just showed me the electricity bill. That number increased so rapidly that it was like watching the heart rate monitor rise before the patient fainted. That's right. You can optimize your workforce. You cannot optimize the laws of physics. For over 20 years, Europe has led the green transition. Reduce emissions. Invest in wind and solar power. That's noteworthy. But the way they do it is like renovating a roof, while removing the foundation altogether. The strategy unfolded as follows. Gradually shut down nuclear power plants, particularly in Germany and Belgium. Shale gas extraction, fracking, is prohibited, just like in the United States. Dependent on Russian gas as a backup source. Expanding renewable energy, but lacking large-scale storage systems. Problem? The wind doesn't always blow. The sun doesn't always shine. And Vladimir Putin isn't always a reliable partner. When Russia invaded Ukraine, energy prices in Europe at times increased many times over. During the period 2023-2024, European industries will have to pay 3-4 times higher electricity prices than the US and China. Imagine two identical factories. $1 is paid per unit of electricity, one payment of $4. Who will survive? You can't compete when your electricity bill is 3 times more expensive than your competitors. And the consequences aren't just about the financial statements. The factory closed, lost job, tax reduction, public services are shrinking. The city began to fall into disrepair. Urban decline does not begin with crime. It starts with the energy bill. There's a bitter irony I once heard. We build up nuclear power to save the environment, then burn coal to save policy. It sounds like a joke, but for many businesses, that's the reality. When you gamble your industrial future on the weather, you've turned economics into a casino. Do you think this is a courageous long-term vision? Or a political gamble at the wrong time? And as energy becomes expensive, another question arises. How can we maintain national defense, welfare, and security simultaneously? That is the final wound. The price of free peace has expired. For 75 years, Europe lived in a state that was almost mythical. The war is over, open border, welfare increased, and most importantly, America stands guard at the gate. NATO is like a high-level alarm system that Europe leases with a promise. As for real money, they use it to build hospitals, provide unemployment benefits, and take vacations so long that Americans can only sigh after hearing it. But everything has an expiration date. And so is free peace. When conflicts returned to Europe, the first thing to disappear was probably not the soldiers, but the illusion. There's a chilling fact. In a high-intensity conflict, the British Army could reportedly run out of supplies in just about 2 days. 2 days. That means, if it were a football match, they wouldn't even have had time to play the first half. And Germany? An economic powerhouse. But the military has been criticized to the point where there are stories that soldiers have to conduct exercises with replacement equipment due to a lack of supplies. It sounds like a comedy, but that's the kind of humor that makes you want to swallow your mouth after you've laughed. A civilization can build high-speed trains, but it lacks the tools to defend itself. Now, Europe must rebuild. But money doesn't grow on its own. €1 spent on tanks is €1 not spent on schools. A budget for artillery is a budget for hospitals. And here's the cruel dilemma. Can you maintain an expensive welfare democracy model while simultaneously rebuilding your military power? Or will you have to sacrifice one of the two? Is Europe caught between two bills, welfare and war, and its wallets are becoming increasingly thin? In 2024, Mario Draghi warned that Europe would need approximately $800 billion annually to catch up with the US and China. $800 billion a year. Imagine having to implement 2 Marshall Plans each year continuously without interruption. But to achieve that, the EU needs to be more unified. And that's where things started to fall apart. Germany didn't want to take on Italy's debt. France doesn't want to mess with farmers. Hungary is still Hungary. A bitter irony. Europe may agree on the size of plastic bottle caps, but it cannot agree on its own destiny. What do you think? Does Europe have the political will to pay this bill? Or will they continue to delay until there is no turning back? And now, after 6 wounds, we must look directly at the consequences unfolding on the streets. Urban decay, which doesn't need confrontations, but is enough to make a city lose its soul. Urban decay isn't about houses burning down or tanks rolling across squares. It's more sophisticated. It's more polite. It comes as a bill that increases every year. I passed through a once bustling city center in Western Europe. The store is still open, the lights are still on, but the for rent table appears more often than the opening table. There was no explosion. There's only space, higher taxes. Housing is more expensive. In many major cities, apartment prices have risen so rapidly that a middle-class family has to spend most of their income just on rent. Imagine working for a whole month just to keep the keys. The young men left. This doesn't require complex data. Just look at the bar on Friday night. More gray hair than dyed hair. As the average age of a city increases year by year, it's like a football team with no young reserve players left. When the youngest people leave, what they take with them is not just their labor, but their future. Public services are overloaded. The hospital is more crowded. Longer waiting times. The school lacks funding. It did not collapse. Just slow down. It's like an old clock starting to run wrong. And then there's a mental shift that's hard to measure. Trust decreases. People are starting to feel that the system is no longer serving them. They are serving the system. Europe still has some of the most beautiful squares in the world, but squares don't pay the next generation. When a city lives on its past, it stops investing in its future. Do you feel this way where you live? Or am I exaggerating? Because after all, the question isn't whether Europe will decline. The question is, which path will it choose next? And that's where we enter 2 completely different perspectives. Europe did not collapse in the smoke and fire. It's changing in the light that's still on. The 6 wounds we've just passed, industry leaving, an aging population, a breathless innovation, capital flight, expensive energy, and expired peace dividends are not prophecies. These are calculations. What do you think? Is this a temporary cycle of history? Or is it an inevitable consequence of policy choices made over decades? If you live in Europe or have ever worked here, have you experienced this change in real life? Please leave your comments in the comment section. I really want to hear your perspective, even if you disagree. If you find this analysis thought-provoking, subscribe to the channel so we can continue our frank, unembellished, and unsensational conversations based solely on facts and real-life experiences. And one important thing, this video is not intended to attack any individual, nation, or people. This is an analysis of economic, political trends based on publicly available information and personal perspectives. The goal is discussion, not division. Thank you for following. See you in the next video.